Gareth Gordon reporting. Well, with me now to discuss tonight's development and the forthcoming talks on flags, parades and the past are Gerry Kelly from Sinn Féin, Chris Little from the Alliance Party, and from our Foyle studio we are joined by Gregory Campbell from the DUP. You're all very welcome to the programme. Gerry Kelly, first of all, how significant a change of policy, an apparent change of policy, is this by the police in South Belfast?
Well, it's a step forward. I think it is a move of leadership by the police. I have to say that in North Belfast and lots of other places, police officers on the ground were saying that the policy was that they would not go near flags. The clear indication now is that where they are in these areas, that some action will be taken. Let me say this, and during that, because we are going to talk about the House talks, I think, but during the House talks, one of the things, because the unionists would not budge at all, not an inch on the flags, and one of the suggestions put to them was, let's start off small. What about hospitals, places of worship and schools having as no flag areas for any flag, maybe 50 yards either side of them, just to start the whole process off, and still they wouldn't budge even on that. So
what unionists are concerned about tonight, and there have been quite a few statements issued, we're going to hear from Gregory Campbell in just a moment, what they fear is that Sinn Féin will now attempt to exploit this apparently new policy on the part of the PSNI in South Belfast in other areas. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, paramilitaries were exploiting the previous policy all over the place. I think we have to take this, go at it easy. I don't think anybody's arguing about flags that are coming down in areas where they are quite welcome, but in areas which have changed and in areas which are mixed, and you saw, maybe it's a fox pop, but on the road that people were saying, we don't want these flags up. And I think people have to take cognizance of that. Well, and let this not turn into, they're going to take down every flag in the north. That's not what it's about. It's about being a bit sensible about the issue here.
Okay, Gregory Campbell, what could be wrong with sensitivity on the part of the police to an issue which is obviously causing concern in a mixed part of South Belfast?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, other than people will now say, well, if that's the case, and I have examples in my constituency where there are mixed areas, for example, in Limavady, that I and my colleagues have been working, trying to get tricolours down that have been put up there year in and year out for months on end. And are we going to have the same sensitivity as it's being described by police there, who will say, OK, if we see tricolours going up there, we're going to forcibly remove them? Is this going to start a trend now where mixed areas right across Northern Ireland will be subject to close police scrutiny, while criminals and gangsters will be even more difficult to apprehend because there's a Land Rover of policemen, one or two of them up a lamppost trying to bring down a flag, while two or three others wait to see that no one else comes round to try and stop them? Is that the level that we're going to descend to?
Well, what is the DUP's position on this? Because I'm getting a mixed message here. You're saying that you've been concerned about getting tricolours down in Limavady for some time, but your party colleague Christopher Stolford in South Belfast is saying people need to wise up. The police have got much more important things to be doing than worrying about flags. So which is it? Are you concerned about flags? Are you not concerned about flags?
Well, I just said there what we were concerned about, that people have more important things to do.
Except that you'd like the tricolours down.
No. But what the police cannot do, Mark, what they cannot do is say in South Belfast, because a Sinn Féin MLA goes to them and says, look, you're going to have to do something about union flags going up in this mixed area. The police can't say, well, we'll intervene there, but will not intervene anywhere else. We've got to be very, very careful here that we don't exacerbate an already delicate position.
But what about the people, OK, you don't want to exacerbate an already delicate position. What about the people responsible for putting the flags up? The length of the Ormeau Road in South Belfast, no longer a Protestant stronghold, 3 flags every lamppost for the past couple of weeks. Now, that is presumably designed to intimidate people. That is the marking out of territory. What about people who are uncomfortable about that and who don't want to see those flags there?
Well, you see, in various areas of Northern Ireland, we had what were called flags protocols, where local areas, and for the most part, they worked reasonably well. Sometimes there were problems, but they worked reasonably well. And that was where local groups, local communities, along with police and other community representatives, had a discussion about if flags were going to go up, how long were they going to go up, and how quickly could they come down again. But those flags protocols fell apart, and they fell apart as a result of Belfast City Council's decision 18 months ago to remove the Union flag from its 365 days a year.
So it's revenge.
Position.
It's tit for tat, is it?
No, it's not revenge. But I think if people take a decision which is an extraordinary decision, which sends shockwaves across the community, you know, they have to say to themselves, was that the right decision, and should we revisit that in an effort to try and de-escalate the tensions? Because we all have to work towards that direction now.
Chris Little, do you see this latest development and this statement given to The View tonight as progress? Is it a policy you would like to see rolled out across Northern Ireland?
Well, Mark, I think people are increasingly fed up with the abdication of leadership we're seeing from the DUP and Sinn Féin here. The political parties, DUP and Sinn Féin, they have the power and authority to take this out of the hands of the police by reaching agreement around the issue of flags. The Alliance Party put forward proposals during the Haas process to deal with these types of issues. The DUP, the Ulster Unionist Party, point blank refused to address this particular issue. The DUP and Sinn Féin have done nothing to address the issue in 7 years in the office of First and Deputy First Minister, even though there was an original flags protocol in place which set out things such as no flags on arterial routes, which the one under question is. So the political parties have the power to get round the table and to take this out of the hands of the police, quite frankly.
But what about the police's strategy at the moment? I mean, could you foresee a circumstance where officers on the ground in South Belfast or anywhere else, if the policy was rolled out more widely, where officers would be arresting people putting up flags for a breach of the peace? I mean, would that not further heighten tensions?
Well, as I say, I think a failure of political leadership is putting the police in an extremely difficult position here. The public have spoken on this. 75% of people don't support flags on lampposts for a prolonged period of time. At best, they want to see a time-bound, respectful display of flags, and the political parties need to put a process in place where that can be delivered. And yes, of course, enforcement may be necessary at some point in time by the police.
OK, but the flags are up at the moment, and the police clearly are not going to take them down.
Well, there's a lack of clarity around that.
Well, they've made it very clear that it's not their job to take flags down.
I think this is an issue that's clearly damaging community relations. We heard in the piece it's damaging for traders and economy in the area. The political parties need to deal with this issue, and there's another opportunity to do so in the upcoming talks. It's clearly time that we get on with delivering on this issue.
Well, let's move on to the upcoming talks. Gerry Kelly, the talks are about several things, and flags, of course, are part of the agenda, or we think flags are part of the agenda, certainly an outstanding issue to be resolved. What is the status of those talks at the moment as you understand it? Because when you talk to Sinn Féin, there's renewed momentum, and this is a serious attempt to resolve the issue in a small window of opportunity. When you talk to the DUP, they say it's just a continuation of the leaders' talks. They don't know what you're getting so excited about.
Well, they should be getting excited, because if we want to try and get this thing sorted out, then it's going to take talks, it's going to take intensive talks, and they need to be as soon as possible. What has happened is that the DUP seems now just not to be looking over their shoulder at the TUV, but also at the Ulster Unionists. You know, they need to show leadership, they need to get into these talks, and we need to do something about it. There are mixed messages coming out here, because Gregory said about Limavady, and I don't know enough about it, but if there is an issue around there where there is a mixed community and there are tricolours up there, then I am up for that. Let's talk about that and let's get something sorted out. But I mean, I repeat what happened already in the talks. In simple areas where I think any ordinary person would have said, okay, hospitals should keep that out, schools, place of worship, let's start there. They wouldn't even countenance that, and that's the difficulty.
That's an interesting point that you raised, Gregory Campbell. How do you respond to that invitation, seemingly, by Gerry Kelly on the programme tonight to talk about Limavady? If there are tricolours in a mixed area that are causing a problem, let's get into the talks and let's talk about it and see if we can resolve it.
Well, Gerry Kelly talked about leadership. I hope your viewers can see this picture, because this picture is a picture of orange men proceeding to their church in Dungiven. There's no flags, there's no banners, there's no drums, there's nothing there except orange men walking to church. Now, what happened as a result of that? Whenever the orange men applied to walk to Dungiven last Sunday, Sinn Féin were into the Parades Commission to lodge an objection. That's hardly giving leadership. Then, whenever the late application for a protest was approved by the Parades Commission, what did Sinn Féin then do after objecting to it? They then had 4 councillors along with a crowd who tried to stop that peaceful procession with no flags, no banners, no drums, no music. You know what Sinn Féin want? Sinn Féin want not an orange man about the place. Now, Jerry Kelly and Sinn Féin need to realise that this isn't going to work. It's not going to work. They need to get real. And they need to understand that if we're talking about a shared future, and that's what most people want, then we have to knuckle down, we have to accept cultural identities, and it's not easy for people in my community, but it's not easy for Republicans either. And they need to wake up and they need to show some leadership and get people to accept peaceful, innocuous parades like that give offence to no one, are inoffensive, but they choose to object and take offence where none was offered.
But it's not one-way traffic, with the greatest respect, because I have no doubt that Jerry Kelly, if we had time here, would quote chapter and verse about instances where parades taking place were not sensitive to local residents and the areas through which they were processing. So you've heard that debate before. We need leadership on both sides.
Yes, and we're prepared to give that.
Are you?
Yes, we are, and that's why
How
we're
are you going to demonstrate that?
Well, we're going to demonstrate it because there's a continuation of the talks that we engaged in last year, and we will go on. But there needs to be an initiative taken on either side. We're prepared to put ourselves forward and to try and negotiate and see if we can get a resolution. Because it's not a resolution for Sinn Féin to sit back and say, look, Garvackie Road can sit out there and fester, the Ormeau Road can sit out there, Twaddell can sit out there. Those issues have to be resolved. Sinn Féin can't just walk away and say, we're not going to resolve this.
Very, very briefly, Gregory Campbell, there was a deal before after the Hillsborough talks, but you couldn't sell it to the Orange Order. DUP was happy with it. You'd sorted something out with Sinn Féin and the other parties. You couldn't sell it to your own people. So are you prepared to go back to that, put that back on the table?
Well, that was a few years ago, and we have been back to the table since that, and we are prepared, to get those negotiations going. But, be under no illusion here, Mark. Everybody's got to step up to the mark in the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks, because there is a very, very difficult situation brewing out there on the streets in Northern Ireland.
Okay. He put the date back just there in the last couple of days, put the date back for the talks to start.
Okay, what about, well, I want to hear from Chris Little, but just before I do that, what about the leadership that's not being shown by Sinn Féin, according to Gregory Campbell? I don't want to go through the Dungiven situation in a lot of detail, but, the message that sends out, Sinn Féin objecting to orange men processing to church without any flags or emblems, and Sinn Féin tried to stop that. He's not happy. Look, he's showing the picture. He's clearly annoyed about it.
I don't know what he means by trying to stop it, but if he means that they went in to talk to the Parades Commission, it's a very legitimate thing to do. We don't have the power.
Physically tried to stop it on the road.
Well, according to yourself, Gregory.
According to impartial observers who were there.
Well, whatever about it, Sinn Féin wasn't happy.
Well, Sinn Féin and the residents in any area, as well as the DUP and others in other areas, can come in and talk about this. What we're down to in the end is, are they prepared to sit down and try and work this out? We had the opportunity to do that. All the parties except the Ulster Unionist Party and the DUP were prepared to accept it, despite the fact that it was pain on all sides. We're prepared to accept that.
Chris Little, who's going to chair these talks, and do they stand any real sense of success? Well, any real chance of success?
You have the DUP and Sinn Féin here tonight, who are the government department responsible for the community relations strategy for Northern Ireland. It states clearly that all public space should be shared space. I think we need to see significantly more leadership from both parties if that's going to be delivered. And shared space is not neutral space. It's about behaving in a respectful, balanced way when you're in that space. And it's clear we have some way to go before we achieve that.
But both men, interestingly, both Jerry Kelly and Gregory Campbell said that they are prepared to show leadership, and they do recognise that difficult decisions need to be taken. Is there a tiny chink of hope, perhaps, tonight?
Well, I certainly hope so, but we've had 7 years of this OFM, DFM, and the Alliance Party put forward tangible proposals that could solve some of these issues at the last Haas process. I hope we see some delivery in these talks for the sake of our community and our economy here in Northern Ireland.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see what happens when the talks get underway. We need to leave it there for now, gentlemen. Thank you all very much indeed.